Hello there. I have a treat for you. This is one of my favorite books ever. It is called The Keeping Quilt, and it's by one of my favorite authors ever, Patricia Polacco. I want you to look closely at the cover. To me, it looks like it's a pencil sketch, and then they did add a little color. See that? I just love that. And now look at the back. It just looks so warm and inviting, I think. Isn't that nice? So, one of my favorite books. Warning to moms and dads and grandmas and grandpas and all other adults or babysitters. This is a long book. And kids, if your parents don't think that tonight is the night to listen to this book because you really need to get to bed, that's okay. Maybe tomorrow night. So here we go. Patricia Polacco's The Keeping Quilt. When my great-grandma Anna came to America, she wore the same thick overcoat and big boots she had worn for farm work, but her family weren't dirt farmers anymore. In New York City, her father's work was hauling things on a wagon, and the rest of the family made artificial flowers all day. Now, artificial means not real, okay? Everyone was in a hurry, and it was so crowded, not like back home Russia. But all the same, it was their home, and most of their neighbors were just like them. And also, every page has just a little tiny pop of color. Forgot to tell you, I've got a broken arm. So I'm having a little trouble, but I'm still going to read this bedtime story. When Anna went to school, English sounded to her like pebbles dropping into shallow water. Psh, psh, psh. In 6 months, she was speaking English. Her parents almost never learned, so she spoke English for them too. The only thing she had left of back home Russia were her dress and babushka she liked to throw up in the air when she was dancing. So what is her babushka, can you tell? And her dress was getting too small. After her mother had sewn her a new one, she took her old dress and babushka. Then from a basket of old clothes, she took Uncle Vladimir's shirt, Aunt Havala's nightdress, and an apron of Aunt Natasha's. We will make a quilt to help us always remember home, Anna's mother said. It will be like having the family in back home Russia dance around us at night. Can you see them dancing in the background? And so it was. Anna's mother invited all of the neighborhood ladies. They cut out animals and flowers from the scraps of clothing. Anna kept the needles threaded and handed them to the ladies as they needed them. The border of the quilt was made of Anna's babushka. On Friday nights, Anna's mother would say the prayers that started the Sabbath. The family ate challah and chicken soup. The quilt was the tablecloth. Anna grew up and fell in love with great grandpa Sasha. To show he wanted to be her husband, he gave Anna a gold coin, a dried flower, and a piece of rock salt, all tied into a linen handkerchief. The gold was for wealth, the flower for love, and the salt for their lives would have flavor. She accepted the hanky, and they were engaged. Under the wedding chuppah, Anna and Sasha promised each other love and understanding. After the wedding, the men and women celebrated separately. That means not together. Can you see it? This is a heavier book. When Grandma Carl was born, it might be Grandma Carly was born, Anna wrapped her daughter in the quilt to welcome her warmly into the world. Carly was given a gift of gold, flour, salt, and bread. Gold so she would never know poverty, a flour so that she would always know love, and salt so her life would always have flavor, and bread so that she would never know hunger. Carly learned to keep the Sabbath and to cook and clean and do washing. "You'll marry someday," Anna told Carly, and again the quilt became the wedding chuppah, this time for Carly's wedding to Grandpa George. Men and women celebrated together, but they still did not dance together. In Carly's wedding bouquet were a gold coin, bread, and salt. Carly and George moved to a farm in Michigan, and great-grandma Anna came to live with them. The quilt was once again wrapped around a little girl, Mary Ellen. Mary Ellen called Anna Lady Grandma. She had grown very old and was sick a lot of the time. The quilt kept her legs warm. On Anna's 98th birthday, the cake was a kulich. Now I hope I can pronounce that for you. Kulich, maybe? A rich cake with raisins and candied fruit in it. Oopsie. I got a waving book at you. Let me see here. Can you see that good? This is probably the hardest story I've ever written, or read, not written. When great-grandma Anna died, prayers were said to lift up her soul to heaven. My mother, Mary Ellen, was now grown up. When Mary Ellen left home, she took the quilt with her. When she became a bride, the quilt became her chuppah. For the first times, friends who were not Jews came to the wedding. My mother wore a hat, but in her bouquet were gold, bread, and salt. The quilt welcomed me, Patricia, into the world, and it was the tablecloth for my first birthday. So now, Patricia, who is that? Well, she's the writer of the book. She's our author, right? So this is a true story. Isn't that cool? At night, I would trace my fingers around the edges of each animal on the quilt before I went to sleep. I told my mother stories about the animals on the quilt. She told me whose sleeve made the horse, whose apron made the chicken, whose dress had made the flowers, and whose babushka went around the edge of the quilt. The quilt was a pretend cape when I was in the bull ring, or sometimes a tent in the steaming Amazon jungle. At my wedding, men and women danced together. In my bouquet were gold, bread, and salt, and a sprinkle of wine, so I should always know laughter. So this is Patricia's wedding day. Many years ago, I held Tracy Denise in the quilt for the first time. 3 years later, my mother held Stephen John in the quilt for the first time. We were all so proud of Tracy's new baby brother. Let's see if I can hold this for you better. And like their mother, grandmother, and great-grandmother before them, they too used the quilt to celebrate birthdays and make superhero capes. There's the birthday. Sorry about that. As the years passed and Tracy and Stephen were growing up, their grandmother took pleasure at every family gathering to tell the story of the quilt. We all knew whose clothes made each flower an animal. My mother was lucky enough to show the wonder of this quilt to my brother's grandchildren, her great-grandchildren. When my mother died, prayers were said to lift her soul to heaven. Tracy and Stephen were all grown up and getting ready to start their own lives. Now, as my children grow, this quilt has become a part of their hearts. I decided to share its story with children everywhere, so I wrote a book to take with me on school visits for students to learn all about my family traditions. Do you see Patricia there? In time, my son promised his life to his bride under this quilt. I gave them both bread so that they would never know hunger, salt so that their lives would always have flavor, flowers so that they would always know love, and finally a coin, so they would never be poor of spirit. When my daughter stood under this quilt to promise her heart to her partner, she too received bread, salt, flowers, and a coin. As the years passed, the Keeping Quilt became fragile. Without my knowing, my son and daughter took digital photos of the quilt and sent them to my sister-in-law and her quilting guild. See how fragile it was getting? And now I think they're going to fix it up. Wouldn't that be nice? Let's see. The photos help them make an exact pattern of the original. They even researched online to find the right fabrics to create the quilt. One heart from the original quilt was removed and added to the replica. They talked about their own families and traditions as they sewed. So now I want you to look at this picture, see if you can find a heart. And see if you can find a heart that looks like that on this one. My children presented the new quilt to me as a complete surprise on my birthday. Then I made a very hard decision. With a bittersweet heart, I let the original Keeping Quilt leave my care to be on loan to the Mazza Museum at the University of Findlay in Findlay, Ohio. Why do you think they'd want to put it in a museum? It has a lot of history. A lot of wonderful and maybe some sad memories. Oh man, here's what it is on the wall in the museum. It warms my heart to know that so many people will see the Keeping Quilt on display. Hopefully it will stir the beauty of memory and the richness of family in their souls, and they will take these feelings away with them. They will create legacies of their own. Now I take the new quilt to visit schools. Many hopeful brides and grooms have stood under it on their wedding day. It has covered many a table for special banquets. Children have run around using it as a cape in the backyard. It has covered the coffins of those in our family whom we have loved and mourned. But best of all, this quilt has wrapped the most precious gift of all, new lives. And that, my dears, is it. Now, I know it was a long story, and actually, she added more to the end after the 25th wedding or 25th anniversary of this book. She added more pages, so that was kind of cool. There's one more thing for mom and dads. On the back, it says, meet the author and illustrator and get activities at kids.simonandschuster.com. Now, I don't know if that's still available out there, but it's worth a shot. All right, now that was a long book. You guys better get to bed. All right, see you later. See if I can get my mouse down. Okay, see ya, bye.